You have been lied to, and the lie has been costing you for years. Not by a person, not by a brand, but by a belief so deeply embedded in fitness culture that almost no one questions it. The belief that your weight is a maths problem, that fat loss is simply calories in versus calories out, that if you just eat less and move more, your body will cooperate. Here is the truth. Right now, inside your gut, there are approximately 10 trillion bacteria, and those bacteria are voting on whether every calorie you consume gets burned as energy or locked away as fat, and they are winning the vote every single time, because no one ever told you the vote was happening. You could eat clean all week, you could hit every macro target, you could train hard 4 times and still gain weight, not because you lack discipline, but because the wrong bacteria are in charge of your metabolism, and they are very good at their job. This is not about willpower. It is not about your genetics. It is not about your age or your hormones in isolation. It is about a single biological ratio, the ratio of Firmicutes bacteria to Bacteroidetes bacteria in your gut. 2 families of microorganisms that are engaged in a constant power, struggle over your body's most important metabolic decisions, and whichever side is dominant right now is determining whether you burn fat today or store it. Your body is not broken. It is not working against you. It has simply been receiving the wrong signal for a very long time, and today, that changes. If you have ever felt like your body is ignoring everything you do, drop a in the comments. You need to see this. For 200,000 years, Firmicutes bacteria were a survival miracle. Your ancestors faced winters with no food, famines that lasted months, and these bacteria evolved one extraordinary ability. They could extract bonus calories from food that the body would otherwise pass right through, fermenting complex plant fibers into additional energy, pulling extra fuel from almost nothing. That was brilliant. It kept the human species alive, but here is the collision that is destroying modern metabolism. Your gut bacteria have not updated their software in 200,000 years, and your food environment has changed completely. There is no famine coming. There never will be. But your Firmicutes do not know that. They are still running a survival program designed for a world that no longer exists, and they are storing fat like the winter is always coming. On the other side of this battle are the Bacteroidetes, and these are the organisms that research now confirms are the metabolic key you have been missing. When Bacteroidetes dominate your gut, they ferment dietary fiber into 3 specific molecules: acetate, propionate, and butyrate. These are called short-chain fatty acids, and they are essentially a biological telegram sent directly to your fat cells that says, stop storing, start burning. They activate an enzyme called AMPK, the same enzyme that exercise activates, the same pathway that essentially flips your body from accumulation mode into oxidation mode. Think of it this way. Firmicutes are an aggressive mining operation extracting every last calorie from your food. Bacteroidetes are a clean energy grid, sending fat-burning instructions to every cell in your body, and the ratio between them determines which grid your metabolism is running on right. Now, you have been measuring the wrong variable. The calorie is not the controller. The bacterium is. 2 people can eat the exact same meal, and one stores 30% more fat than the other, not because of willpower, not because of metabolism in the traditional sense, but because of what lives in their gut. The fitness industry has never told you this, because they cannot sell you a membership to fix it. What the research reveals: the first thing you need to understand is that obesity is biologically transmissible through the microbiome. This is not a theory. This is a finding published in Nature in 2006 and replicated in Science in 2013. Researchers took the gut bacteria from obese mice and transplanted them into germ-free mice, mice with no bacteria of their own, eating a perfectly normal diet, and those mice became significantly fatter, not because of what they ate, but because of what now lived in their gut. The microbiome alone, with no change in food or exercise, transferred the metabolic fate. Then they repeated it in humans. They took identical twins, one lean and one obese, and transplanted their gut bacteria into separate germ-free mice. The mice that received the obese twins' microbiome became fatter. Same genes in the twins, same food in the mice. The only variable was the bacteria, and it was enough. This means that an obesity-associated microbiome is not just a symptom of being overweight. It is a cause. It has its own momentum, its own biology. And unless you change the ecosystem keeps running its original program. The second mechanism is the ELPS leak, and this is the one that drives your cravings without you ever knowing it. When firmicutes dominate your gut, they release large quantities of a molecule called lipopolysaccharide, or LPs. a fragment of bacterial cell wall that crosses your gut lining into your bloodstream. And when it reaches your bloodstream, it triggers a state of low-grade chronic inflammation that tells your fat cells to lock shut, stop releasing, accumulate. Obese individuals carry LPS levels up to 76% higher in their blood than lean individuals. And here is what makes this truly insidious. That same LPS crosses the blood-brain barrier and disrupts the dopamine reward circuits that govern food choice. Your cravings for sugar, for processed food, for the exact ingredients that feed firmicutes even more. Those are not character flaws. Those are bacteria running a hostile takeover of your reward system, feeding themselves through your desire. The fix is not willpower, it is starving the bacteria that are generating the cravings in the first place. Have you ever been doing well on a diet and then one craving just derailed everything? Reply below. The science behind that is wild. The third discovery is the most recent, and it is the one that changes everything about how we think about stubborn fat. In March 2026, researchers at City of Hope, the Broad Institute, and Keio University published a study in Nature demonstrating that specific gut bacteria can physically convert energy storing white fat into calorie-burning beige fat without additional exercise, without calorie restriction. Through a bacterial relay that works like this, one group of bacteria alters bile acid composition in the gut. Those altered bile acids signal fat tissue to shift toward a burning phenotype. Simultaneously, a second bacterial signal travels to the liver and triggers the release of a hormone called FGF21, a metabolism-amplifying hormone that deepens and sustains the fat conversion. The result is a body running hotter, burning more, producing less stored fat from the same food. When this experiment was run in germ-free mice without the right gut bacteria, the effect vanished entirely. The diet alone did nothing. The bacteria were the switch, and this is the line I want you to hold on to. The upgrade was already inside you. The bacteria activated. Here is the counterintuitive part that most people get completely wrong, and this is where the supplement industry is quietly taking your money. When people hear this research, they immediately go and buy a probiotic. They grab the first bottle they find with 1 billion live cultures on the label and assume the job is done. But here is what that bottle does not tell you. Most commercial probiotics contain lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains, useful organisms, but they are not bacteroidetes. They do not produce meaningful quantities of the short-chain fatty acids that activate AMPK. They do not grow Akkermansia mucinifila, the barrier-repairing species that closes the LPS leak. And most critically, a probiotic dropped into a firmicute's dominant intestinal environment without prebiotic substrate is like planting a seed in concrete. The bacteria are real, but without the right soil they cannot root. They are expelled within 72 hours, and nothing changes. The sequence is everything. Prebiotic fibrae must come first. It creates the ecosystem in which fat-burning bacteria can actually take hold and compete. Then the probiotic strains can establish specific strains with clinical evidence. Lactobacillus gazzeri, SBT 2055, for visceral fat, Akkermansia. Mucinifila for gut barrier repair and LPS reduction, grown most effectively by polyphenol-rich foods, pomegranate extract, green tea, dark berries. The microbiome shift takes a minimum of 8 weeks of consistent intervention before the ecosystem reaches a new stable state. This is not a quick fix. It is a biological reset. The thing nobody talks about: microbial memory. Here is what makes yo-yo dieting a biological trap rather than a personal failing. In 2016, researchers discovered that the gut microbiome of previously obese mice retains an obesity-associated memory even after successful weight loss. When those mice returned to normal eating, their microbiome snapped back to the obese configuration far faster than mice that had never been obese, and their fat stores followed. Think of the microbiome as a dial that has been set to a default position for years. A calorie-based diet can temporarily force the dial to a new setting, but if you do not permanently shift the bacterial ecosystem, the dial snaps back. And when it does, it pulls the fat with it. You were not failing the diet. The diet was failing to change the bacteria. So here is what you actually do with this. And the order matters as much as the actions themselves. You start every morning with prebiotic fibrae before anything else. 15 grams of inulin-rich food, raw chicory, leek, raw garlic, or dandelion greens. This feeds Bacteroidetes populations first. Before firmicutes get the processed food signal they are waiting for, you follow this with a plant. Protein base at breakfast, lentils, chickpeas, or tempeh. Because the 2026 Nature study identified low animal protein, high-fiber dietary patterns as the dietary trigger that activates the bacterial relay linked to fat browning. You are not cutting protein, you are shifting its source, and that shift sends a completely different signal to your microbiome. Across the day, you target 30 different plant species per week. Not 30 servings of the same plant, 30 different ones. A different apple variety counts. Red onion and white onion count separately. The diversity of input creates the diversity of bacteria, and diversity of bacteria is the single most consistent predictor of lean metabolic function across every large-scale microbiome study. You add a small daily serving of a fermented food, kimchi, kefir, or raw sauerkraut to maintain microbial diversity while the ecosystem is shifting. And in the evening, you include a source of resistant starch, cooled cooked rice, green banana, or cooked then cooled potato. Because resistant starch feeds CFA producing bacteria specifically during overnight digestion, when your gut microbiome is at its most metabolically active. The results timeline is not dramatic in week 1, it is systematic. By day 3, most people notice a reduction in bloating as ELP's production begins to drop and the gut wall starts to close. By week 1, the craving cycles begin to break as F. prausnitzii populations rise, and the ELP's dopamine craving loop starts to lose its grip. By week 2, energy stabilizes, the afternoon crash fades, blood sugar response improves. By week 8, the microbiome has reached a new stable state, and the fat-burning configuration is no longer something you are working to create. It is the default. Fat loss becomes a side effect, not the goal, a consequence of a system that is finally running the right program, without even trying. Save this video. This is the protocol. And if this is the first time you've heard any of this, subscribe. This is exactly what this channel is built for. The fitness industry has sold suffering for decades, because suffering sells memberships. Cut harder, train longer, earn your food, white knuckle through every craving, blame yourself when it stops working, and none of it. None of the restriction or the guilt or the 5 a.m. punishment sessions. None of. It accounts for the 10 trillion organisms that are making the actual metabolic decisions inside you. Burning fat is not a battle of willpower. It is a negotiation with your biology. And the negotiating table is in your gut. Your body is not broken. It is not stubborn. It is not your enemy. It has been given the wrong signal for a very long time, and it has been doing exactly what any intelligent biological system would do with that signal. Holding on, conserving, protecting. And it was right to do that. It was doing its job perfectly. You just need to change the signal. There was a war happening inside your body when you started watching this. A war between bacteria that store fat and bacteria that burn it. Now you know which side to feed. Now you know what the battlefield looks like and what weapons each side uses. Your body does not release fat when it is under attack. It releases fat when it is healthy, when it is diverse, when it finally believes it is safe. Everything in this protocol sends one signal to your biology. You are safe. It is time to burn. If this changed the way you think about your body, subscribe to this channel. Every week, I break down the biology that the mainstream health industry skips over, so you stop guessing and start understanding exactly how your body works.